Hey, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to be doing a Marvel 2021 wrap up where we're going to be covering the Marvel Cinematic Universe and its movies and Disney Plus shows that came out in 2021. Let's do it. So glad you guys are here to go over everything that came out of Marvel in 2021. Now, obviously 2020 and 2021 being tough years with films and TV shows being delayed, productions being delayed. That pushed back a lot of shows and a lot of movies and actually gave us a very full 2021. We're talking about 9 total Marvel Cinematic Universe films and shows that came out. That's incredible, guys. And I can't wait to see what 2022 has in store for us. So, without further ado, guys, let's just get right into it. We are going to go into it by date order. And then at the end, I am going to give you guys my rankings. So, make sure to stick around for that because I think some of them are going to be a little controversial. But without further ado, guys, let's talk about the first thing that came out in 2021 out of the MCU was WandaVision, the first Marvel Disney Plus show. Guys, wow, what a way to launch Disney Plus, right? You're talking about a show that originally was actually supposed to not be the first show. Falcon and Winter Soldier was going to be the first show that came out, but because of COVID delays and all this stuff, WandaVision was the first show, and wow, what a surprise. So WandaVision came out on January 15th. It was show run by Jack Schaefer, and it was directed by Matt Shakman. I have to say that this was definitely an event series, and what I mean by that is that there was a mystery to it, and it was a weekly release. It just felt like every week everyone was wondering what's going to happen in the mystery of Westview, what's going on with Wanda and Vision. Is Wanda the villain? Is she being controlled? I mean, so many things. There was so much speculation for it. There was so much mystery and intrigue. And I gotta say, guys, this was a show that, being starved of Marvel content for quite a while, I very much enjoyed the event feeling that this gave me. The whole decades theme that they did for every episode I thought was phenomenal. Seeing the behind the scenes on Disney Plus of WandaVision assembled really gave us a backdoor into how hard that they worked and how much into detail they went to make this series. And I gotta say, for me personally, my favorite episodes are episode 3, episode 4, and episode 5, with episode 5 being my absolute favorite. I mean, that episode with Vision growing suspicious, him unearthing, Norm's consciousness, and all the craziness that goes on at the end. I just thought that episode was really well done. I thought it was very exciting. I thought it added so much to the story and answered, but then also gave us more questions. So I will say, for me, the finale was a bit disappointing. I felt that, there was so much hype that was built up, and not a lot of it was paid off. I feel like all we really got was like a CGI, like finale fight, which I don't hate, but I just felt like with a show that touched on so many different things, so many deep things, I felt like I wanted a little more out of it. And like the whole Ralph Bonner thing, Ralph Boner, however you want to say it, like that was just disappointing. So overall, though, I thought it was a great show with a great concept and something that I'd never really seen before done. It was also great storytelling, although it did fall apart in the finale for me a bit. There was top tier acting, the talent was top tier, and the set design was just absolutely spectacular. So overall, I think WandaVision was a great way to start 2021 and also a great way to kick off Disney Plus. And I think that obviously, based off the ratings and everything, it worked out very well for them. So on to the second thing that came out in 2021 out of the MCU was The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That premiered on Disney Plus on March 19th. The showrunner was Malcolm Spellman and the director was Kerry Scoglin. Now, I really enjoyed certain aspects of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think there were some things that they did very well, but I also feel like they missed the mark on a few things. And once again, for me, guys, the finale was just not as strong as I wanted it to be. But it was a really good change of pace. It was more of a like boots on the ground kind of feel compared to the whole WandaVision and magic and mystery and things going on. With this show, guys, I feel like they did a really great job of making this a character study of the Falcon and the issues that he would realistically have in taking up the shield and the current or very close to reality state of America, as far as, where it comes with, being a person of color in America. So obviously those were some themes that I was surprised that they kind of touched on, but glad that they also brought to the center of this show. And I also thought it was a great character study on Bucky and him, dealing with the repercussions of being the Winter Soldier and trying to get over that. I mean, the relationship with the old man at the beginning. I mean, it's just very, very well done. So I really like that they delved into those things, and got into some deep topics. Wyatt Russell as U.S. agent was awesome. Like the fact that we hated him so much right away, and I mean the internet took it too far. I mean, it was just inspired casting, and I really enjoyed his portrayal. And yeah, I mean, I hated his guts. I didn't want him to have the shield, and the turn that they gave him and everything that happened with that character until the very end, I very, very much enjoyed. And obviously mentioning that episode 4, The Whole World Is Watching, wow. Like, that was my favorite episode from this season. I would even say that I probably like that one maybe a little more than the WandaVision one, because just seeing that final shot with him and the bloody shield, I mean, that is just one of those, that's a money shot, right? And so I really enjoyed what they did with that, and kind of seeing this soldier kind of descent into madness, right? So great episode. The journey of Sam getting, Captain Shield, giving it away, and then having to get it back and becoming Captain America, and just that speech at the end, I really thought was powerful. I do have to say that the whole power broker storyline, I just wasn't really into it. At first, I was kind of curious, but then it kind of, like, I enjoyed more of the character moments, right? I enjoyed seeing Bucky get over his Winter Soldier control in Wakanda more so than I did anything with the Power Broker or Carly Morgenthau and like her turn. I mean, I thought they did a good job with that. But in that finale, I'm just thinking back to like the reveal of Agent 13 being, the Power Broker. Was it really a reveal? I think we all kind of saw it coming, and I just thought it was kind of a bit of a letdown in the finale. Overall, I thought this was a very well-written show. There were a lot of things that I enjoyed about it. I thought this show offered great action, great acting. It's like that thing of like they did some things really well, and then some other things not so much. So those were my thoughts on The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. All right, so the third one, it's still Disney Plus, guys. So Loki came out on Disney Plus on June 9th. The showrunner was Michael Waldron, and the director was Kate Herron. So what can I tell you about Loki? Man, I mean, what a fun series, and what a fun journey to go on, right? Now, going into Loki, like when Loki was first announced, I was very intrigued, but I will say I don't think it was one of my top tier shows that I was looking forward to. That would have probably gone to WandaVision. Wow, guys, when this show got started, and just the idea of the TVA, right, the Time Variance Authority, coming in and doing what I had already heard from the comics, I thought it was very interesting. So, and it ended up being a very interesting show. I will say that to me, Loki is the most complete MCU series. Am I saying it's the best thing in the world? No, I do think that there are a few issues with the show, but to me, it's the most complete MCU show because it has a really good finale. Now, it has a satisfying finale is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that the other shows didn't have a good finale. What I'm saying is that they left me a bit disappointed, and with this show, I really felt that they not only answered our questions, but they made it in a fun way. Now, sure, do we still have some questions after Loki? Of course, but I felt satisfied. Like, after watching the finale, I felt like, wow, that was so much fun. What a journey. And yeah, I feel like most of my questions got answered. And I mean, adding Owen Wilson to a show like this, adding Owen Wilson to the MCU in general was, I mean, just so much fun. His dynamic with Loki and the conversations that they have, whether it's, about something as silly as jet skis or whether it's something more serious, and the TVA and the timelines and just some of the deep conversations that they were having. It was just so much fun to watch these two guys work. You could really tell that they had great chemistry and that they were having fun, which allowed us to have fun too. So now, one of the most impressive things about this show for me was that they had to introduce a very, very tough concept. Having to introduce the TVA, variants, different universes, different timelines, the sacred timeline, how timelines work, what pruning is, what pruning really ends up doing. It just changed the scope of the MCU, and I think that is so important, and they did it so well. And I think that could have easily gone very wrong, but I feel like the way that they did it made sense, and it was entertaining. And I think instead of confusing people, it actually clued them in on, oh my God, like this universe just got bigger. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, which, I mean, they kind of have to, right? Because of all the characters that they're going to be introducing. So having said how much I really like the finale, having Jonathan Majors in as a variant of Kang the Conqueror, or He Who Remains, right? I mean, that's what they went with, but we all know that he ends up being Kang the Conqueror. He's a variant of him. But seeing him and seeing his portrayal of that variant was great, and I thought his explanation was very well done, and I just loved the acting and the portrayal of that version of Kang the Conqueror. And so I'm very excited now to see what he does. He is obviously going to be in Ant-Man as Kang the Conqueror, so I'm very excited to see what he does. And obviously we have to follow Loki's journey in season 2, because there's a Loki season 2. I'm very excited about that, guys. So we'll see what else is next to come for Loki. Alright, so next up we have Black Widow, which was released on July 9th and is directed by Kate Shortland. Now, this movie, a lot of drama was around it. It got pushed back so many times. People were wondering, why are we making a Black Widow movie if she's already dead in the MCU? I mean, other people were saying it's about time that, Black Widow gets her own film. I mean, so many things were said about this movie. And even after it came out, right, the whole lawsuit between Scarlett Johansson and Disney, because it was released on Disney Plus at the same time, and, they lost money because of it. So much drama, guys. But in the end, the movie, I ended up thinking, was really, really good. I very much enjoyed Black Widow. To me, the things that really work in this movie is the relationship between Yelena and Natasha. First of all, I gotta say, guys, you guys should already know, if you watch my channel, that I'm a huge fan of Florence Pugh. And bringing her into the MCU, I was very excited for, but I could have never imagined how great she was going to be as Yelena in this show. And then obviously we'll talk about later about her appearance in Hawkeye, but man, now I want a Florence Pugh movie. I want to see her in everything, and she's just such a great addition to the MCU, and I think she did a phenomenal job in this movie. So adding in Red Guardian, played by David Harbour, adding in Melina, played by Rachel Weisz, I thought they did a great job, guys. For me, Florence Pugh as Yelena was a standout. I really like that family dynamic, having that dinner scene. That's my favorite scene in the movie. And it's just one of my favorite scenes in general, mostly because of Florence Pugh's acting, but just kind of seeing their camaraderie and how they just immediately go back to being a family. But Black Widow's like, no, guys, we need to seriously get into this. So just great scenes like that, and Red Guardian and his jokes and about Captain America, and I really enjoy these characters that were put on screen. Most of them. We'll talk about what I didn't like. I also want to mention that the fight choreography in this was really, really cool. I know that we've seen a lot of great action, guys, but certain movies like Captain America the Winter Soldier, they really stand out as wow, having really phenomenal hand-to-hand combat. That fight with Yelena and Black Widow in the kitchen in that Budapest house, I thought was really, really well choreographed, and I really liked some of the fighting. Obviously with Taskmaster, they did some really cool stuff there. Not as much as I wanted, but the fight choreography in this was really well done, so I did want to point that out. There are some negatives to this movie, obviously. I know a lot of people had many complaints for it, and some of them are pretty similar with mine. For me, in this movie, Taskmaster was wasted. Now, I have no issue with Taskmaster being changed to a female. I didn't think that was the issue. To me, I just felt like the character of Taskmaster and the idea of Natasha going after the Red Room was wasted. I felt like those were two competing storylines that should not have been put together in a movie. For me, it should have been either pick the Red Room and have the storyline be Natasha taking down the Red Room and, Dreykov as the villain, as the main villain, or have it be, no, she's going after Taskmaster because someone hired Taskmaster to put a hit on her. I did not like that those two storylines were intertwined into one. I felt like that muddied the plot quite a bit, and also put a character like Taskmaster on such a short leash and limited that character to what could be done, because we weren't able to delve too deep into Taskmaster and what he really does. I mean, if you didn't already know the backstory, you didn't really get much in the movie. Yes, they mentioned she's a mimic, but they didn't do enough. I would have wanted more. So I would have preferred that they either do a Taskmaster storyline where he's the villain, or do a Red Room storyline where Dreykov is the villain. They did both of them. I did not like that, guys. As much as I liked a lot of the other things, I really did not enjoy how Taskmaster was portrayed. So guys, overall, like I said, the best parts for me was Yelena with Natasha, and Yelena and Natasha with the family. That family dynamic to me is what really worked and made this movie entertaining and fun. I really liked, how it started and how we saw young Natasha and kind of seeing that transition into older Natasha. So then we have What If, which came out on August 11th and was showrun by AC Bradley and was directed by Brian Andrews. What a surprise of a series. Now, when What If was announced, I was excited because, I had heard of the What If comics. I hadn't really read any of them, but the idea of like, well, what if, this and this would happen. So I knew what the What If series was going to be like. When I heard it was animated, I thought it was even more interesting. But regardless, this show was great. I mean, I have to say, guys, What If was one of those shows that really surprised me. It's not that I was expecting it to be bad. And by the way, none of these shows were bad, guys. When I do my rankings, none of these were terrible. But I was surprised at how much I actually really enjoyed it, especially that second half of the season. Now, I will say, guys, the first few episodes, especially that first episode, I thought, okay, this is what If is going to be. Just plug and play, take out Cap, put Peggy in. Although even from the first episode, I thought the animation was great. The animation in the show is so unique. I'm so glad that they didn't go with, it just looks like Pixar, or it just looks like, whatever animation style that is cool right now. No, they created their own animation style, and I thought that was very awesome. After that, though, the show just really, really picked up. And, honestly, the episodes just progressively got better and better. And obviously, for a lot of people, their standout is episode 4, the Doctor Strange episode. And I have to say, when that episode came out, I said, wow, this episode just changed the game for what If can be, right? It really just took it to a whole nother level for the series. If we're going to talk about What If, we have to talk about Jeffrey Wright and how awesome his voice work was on this. And by the way, guys, the Watcher is one of those characters that it's kind of one of my favorite things of Marvel that we hadn't really seen much. Now that we actually got the Watcher, Uatu the Watcher, I mean, that's actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if they called them Uatu, but either way, I like the Watchers. They're a really cool concept in Marvel. And so the fact that Jeffrey Wright voiced, the Watcher in this was awesome. And I love that that's what they use to tell these stories. And guys, episode 8 and 9, the last 2 episodes, oh my God, some of my favorite things in Marvel that we have seen. First of all, to see Ultron get all the stones, amazing. I know people complained about how he took out Thanos. I have no complaints about that. That was awesome. I thought that was genius. And those 2 episodes, man, episode 8 with Hawkeye and Black Widow and the sacrifice. Oh, that shot of Clint. I'm just picturing the arrow and that artwork. It just looked amazing. So really enjoyed that. I do have to say also, episode 9, the finale. Once again, another show that to me really hit the finale. Now, the first 2 shows, I felt the finales weren't great. Loki, I really enjoyed. And then What If also really stuck the landing. That fight of all of them against Ultron is really entertaining. It gave me Doctor Strange versus Thanos vibes in Infinity War. And obviously, just bringing back that dark Doctor Strange. Oh, episode 4 was so good, which we might get a little bit of that in Multiverse of Madness. So it just did so much. So this show for not that I didn't have positive expectations out of it, but for the little expectations that I did have, it surpassed them by a lot. So we did get to see cool stuff like that. And that's the whole point of What If, right? Is seeing cool scenarios. And we actually are going to get a season 2, which I'm very excited for. So I can't wait to see some of those episodes. So the next one up is ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now this one released on September 3rd and is directed by Dustin Daniel Cretton. I think I got that right. Dustin Daniel Cretton. Yeah, so this was a movie that when I heard that they were making Shang-Chi, I said, I've heard of Shang-Chi. I know somewhat of his story, but I don't know all of it. Went and did some work, right? Looked at my encyclopedia. And very interesting story, right? The whole Fu Manchu thing and, just kind of how it ties into the Mandarin and stuff. So I very much was kind of looking forward to this. I'm not going to lie and say that it was my number 1 most anticipated movie, but I was looking forward to what they were going to do and see how they were going to handle the Mandarin. So basically, guys, what can I say about this movie? It's a very well done movie. I really enjoyed Simu Liu as Shang-Chi. I really enjoyed Tony Leung as Wenwu. I thought his portrayal was amazing. And the way that they used and portrayed those rings, wow. I mean, in the comics, yes, the Mandarin has rings on his finger, but here they were different kinds of rings. And I'm happy they did that change because they were able to do a lot of cool things with them and they made them look awesome. And by the end of it, you're like, wow, add those rings onto the list of awesome Marvel props that you would really want to have in real life, right? Like Thor's hammer, Cap's shield, like those rings were really cool. And also the addition of Aquafina. Now, Aquafina sometimes can be a little hit or miss for me. Like I really, really enjoyed her in Crazy Rich Asians. I still haven't seen The Farewell, but I didn't enjoy her as much in the Ocean's 8 movie. And in this, I thought she was really good. I thought she was very funny. I thought she added an awesome element to Shang-Chi. I like that they didn't just make Mandarin or Wenwu, just like a villain. Like, no, he had reasons. He was being tricked. He was being fooled. And I like that at the end, it didn't come down to his son having to kill him, right? Because obviously that would have tainted Shang-Chi's character. So I really like that I like the storyline that they laid out. Now, for me personally, there's one thing that really, really bugged me about this movie, and it was bringing in Trevor Slattery, bringing in the fake Mandarin. Now, watching this, I really wanted them to address it, and they did in that dinner scene when Wu addresses it. Like what I didn't enjoy was bringing Trevor back in and just kind of making him this silly, goofy character along with that creature. I mean, guys, I'm just, that's just my personal opinion. I didn't like that they threw Trevor in there. He kind of changed the movie for me as far as like every time he was on screen, it was just overdone, too silly, and super convenient that creature knew where to go, what to do, and just in the nick of time. So I don't know, guys. It just really like annoyed me and bothered me. I just thought like, okay, this is fluff. We don't need this. Like, I understand you're trying to inject humor, but I just don't feel that was the best way to go about it. Honestly, I felt like the humor that they had already injected before that character was in there was a lot better, to be honest. I just didn't like that they threw him in the movie and for the amount of time that they threw him in for. And then, to be honest, I felt like the ending was a bit rushed a bit. Not rushed, but that final battle, I mean, some things are just kind of convenient, right? Like I mentioned. So I don't know. Those were just a few things that kind of bugged me about the movie. But overall, I really did enjoy, the martial arts in it. I really enjoyed the fighting sequences, right? Like the fighting sequence on the bus was really cool. Like the fight on like the bamboo scaffoldings, I thought was really cool. So there was a lot that I liked about the movie, and I just felt like certain things like Trevor Slattery and, the third act were kind of rushed a bit. I will say, though, all these flashbacks that they did of like the mom, like all that stuff I really, really liked. Like seeing young Shang-Chi training. I mean, like all those things I really liked. I even like Zhu Xiaoling, his sister. I thought that was really cool. Like I liked her addition to it. So there's a lot of things I liked and a few things that I didn't like, but those things that I didn't like, I really didn't like. I know a lot of people like Edgar, that you guys have seen on my channel, he really loved Shang-Chi, and I know there's a lot of people that really liked it, and I'm happy for them. Honestly, I'm very excited to see what Shang-Chi does next, in the MCU and seeing those rings again. So overall, still a pretty fun film. All right, so up next, guys, we have another theatrical release, and that's Eternals, which released on November 5th and was directed by Chloe Zhao. Now, you guys already know how I feel about this movie, considering I made a video about this movie, a very lengthy video, a lengthy discussion between me and Edgar regarding Eternals. Now, I'm just going to say, guys, I loved Eternals. I really, really liked it. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I did a whole, almost hour, maybe over an hour long video about it. It's on my channel. You guys can go see it. I really liked it. I love this movie. For me personally, it is top 5 Marvel movie material for me as just kind of a single Marvel movie, even just like a movie in general. I loved Eternals. I love what Chloe Zhao did. I thought that she set out to just make a really good movie, right? Not necessarily a Marvel movie, but just a very good movie with good acting, with a good script, with a good story, with deep, questions and deep meanings. I know for a lot of people, it wasn't their typical Marvel fare, so they didn't really like it. For me, it was the opposite. Now, is it perfect? No, it's not. There's certain things I didn't like about it, but it definitely opened up the doors for what's to come. I'm excited to see what happens with Black Knight. I'm excited to see what happens with the rest of the Eternals, what happens with Arishem and his judgment. So Eternals was a really fun film. I had a great time. I've watched it multiple times, and every time, I just have a lot of fun with it. And next is Hawkeye, which came out on November 24th and was showrun by Jonathan Igla and was directed by Rhys Thomas. So Hawkeye, guys, is a very interesting show for me because I was very, very much looking forward to Hawkeye. And the reason is not why you think. I do like Hawkeye as a character. I think he's a very interesting character, and I think his utilization in the Avengers movies is obviously being mind controlled in the first one, not mind controlled in the second one. I really, really like Jeremy Renner. I've loved his portrayal as Hawkeye. But the main reason I was excited for the show was because of Haley Steinfeld being Kate Bishop. You guys, I'm a huge Haley Steinfeld fan, not just because she's beautiful, but also because I really like her work. I like some of her music as well. I will say, not a big fan of Bumblebee. I know a lot of people love that movie. I thought she was great in it, but I didn't really like it. Edge of 17, I think, is a great movie. She does a great job in it. I was very excited that Marvel cast her as Kate Bishop. Not only that, but that they were willing to wait for her because they were going to start production on this earlier, but she had some other projects, lined up. So they actually waited for her to finish up what she was working on so that she could be Kate Bishop. And I think it was totally worth it. Now, I will say, guys, this series had a lot of issues for me, but the brightest spot for me was Haley Steinfeld's portrayal as Kate Bishop. I thought she nailed it. I thought she did a great job. She brought the charisma. She brought everything that character is, and then some. And the fact that they added Yelena in this, I thought it was great. Now, I know some people complained about the show because it's called Hawkeye, and we're learning more about Kate Bishop, and we're learning more. Well, because this story, yes, it's called Hawkeye, and it was a Hawkeye story, but it was also the passing of the torch. Now, whether they're leading up to do Young Avengers, we're gonna have to see, but it clearly feels like they are. And just seeing this relationship start and where it ends is really interesting to me, and I did enjoy certain aspects of this, but I will say this series to me felt like one of the weaker series that they have put out to date. More so because of the writing and certain characters. Now, obviously, the stars of the show, Hawkeye and Kate Bishop, had the best stories and story arcs. I also have to say that adding Echo into the show was kind of a stroke of genius. I wasn't sure about it at first because that first introduction to Echo, I'll say the first 2 episodes I wasn't a huge fan of. I mean, there were great elements to it, but my biggest issue with this show was how they presented certain characters. For me personally, one of the characters that just didn't really work for me was Eleanor. Some of the lines she was saying were just kind of weird and didn't make sense to me. Every time she was on screen with Kate, it just felt weird. It felt awkward. Like it didn't feel like a mother and a daughter. Now there is, towards the second half of the season when she has that heart to heart with her after, she comes home all beat up and Clint kind of told her to go away. That is when I kind of start to believe that relationship. But for the most part, I just felt like, I don't know if it was her script. I don't want to blame her acting, but just something didn't click for me with that character. And obviously Jack, played by Tony Dalton, I thought was an interesting character. I definitely felt like he was a little over the top. And for me, the strongest things about this show were Haley Steinfeld, her interactions with Hawkeye, the fact that Yelena shows up. Wow, this show definitely needed that. Like when she shows up, it's amazing. And I want to give a shout out to episode 3, I believe it is, where they introduce Echo, where they introduce the backstory of Echo. That episode was where I said, okay, this is good. I mean, that whole introduction sequence of Echo being young, wow. I mean, talk about Marvel and Disney not being afraid about certain subjects and talking about, people with disabilities and people, you have Makari, right, as a deaf actress, and then here obviously you have another deaf actress, and Alaka Cox, I believe her name is. So let's talk about Vincent D'Onofrio, because he shows up in this show, and I have to say it was very exciting to see him in here. I'm a huge Daredevil fan, and I thought adding him in here was just exquisite and perfect. Going into kind of that finale, not the best finale for me personally. I just didn't feel like it was that entertaining. I mean, the fight sequence with Kingpin was, he can take like bombs and bullets now or whatever, bombs and arrows, and just doesn't damage him. So that felt a little silly. And the mom too, Eleanor, so much of that finale just felt like kind of subpar to me. Nothing really shocked me in that finale. Nothing really wowed me. I mean, I guess the fact that Echo ended up shooting Kingpin was kind of shocking, but I don't know, nothing wowed me in that finale. And yes, that conversation with Yelena and Hawkeye was needed, and I'm glad that they had it. But even that, I didn't feel as invested. I didn't feel as emotional as I felt like I should have been. And the LARPers, don't even get me started on the LARPers. I didn't really like their addition. The interactions between Yelena and Kate Bishop and the interactions between Kate Bishop and Hawkeye were the best parts for me. Everything else just kind of felt weird. It didn't feel like genuine, maybe I want to say the word is. I don't know what it was about it. Could have been the script, but In the end, I'm glad we have Kate Bishop in here. I'm glad we kind of got a finality kind of ish for Hawkeye. I think he's kind of done now. I think he's, Kate Bishop's going to take her place now. And that we continue to see Yelena pop up and stuff. And I love it. I love to see her and stuff. Florence Pugh does a great job. So that's kind of where I'm at with Hawkeye. And last but certainly not least, guys, we have to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, which came out on December 17th and was directed by John Watts. Now, you guys know how much I love Spider-Man. We even did a whole video about Spider-Man No Way Home before the movie came out. It was like a pre-release discussion. So go check that out if you haven't. It was another one of those long, lengthy discussions, but very, very worthwhile, I think. And I'm not going to go into a full review here, guys. Edgar and I might do one later, maybe not. We'll see. But I will tell you this. I really, really enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home. I had a blast with it. I thought it was a very fun film. But, and yes, there's a but. I will say there were some issues. I know everyone wants to say that No Way Home was the best thing ever, the best thing since an Avengers film. And I, for the most part, agree. But this film is not perfect. There was a lot that I loved. Obviously, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock in the MCU was awesome. I loved seeing him there. Nearly jumped out of my seat when I saw him because, as I mentioned in that video, I was more excited to see him in there than seeing some of the other people that popped up. But with that said, seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield show up was so much fun. Guys, I want to give full credit to those moments. Those were amazing. I was screaming in the theater when that happened. I need you guys to know that. I had a blast with those moments. And there was so much that was really fun. Seeing, the Green Goblin back. Willem Dafoe still killing it as the Goblin. My gosh. Seeing, Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock. So much fun. I want to give credit to all those moments, guys. It was awesome, and I love the physicality, the fight sequences. Everything looked awesome. But the things that I felt I just didn't like, and I don't want to give a pass on when it comes to Spider-Man, is that I just didn't like the portrayal of Doctor Strange. I felt like they gave us a Doctor Strange that isn't really the Doctor Strange that we're used to seeing. Doctor Strange to me, from we know, not just in the comics, but also just from the movies that we've seen, yes, he's cocky and arrogant, but he's not an idiot, and he would not have let Spider-Man mess up the spell like that. He would not have lost to Spider-Man in a battle. I mean, maybe he would have, but it just felt like a different Doctor. It felt like they dumbed him down. It felt like they watered him down, dumbed him down a bit, and I'm like, first of all, Doctor Strange, I know technically he's not the Sorcerer Supreme because of a whatever silly... I thought that was dumb too, that he's not the Sorcerer Supreme because of a technicality. But he is the Sorcerer Supreme, as far as knowledge goes. And I know Wong has been there longer, whatever, but he's a Sorcerer Supreme for a reason, okay? He knows his stuff. And he's a very smart guy. And he doesn't mess around. He's a very, like he says in Infinity War to Tony, I will let you both die before I give away this time stone, which in the end, once he sees the bigger picture, because he's so smart and he knows that it has to be done for the greater good. The second thing that I didn't really like about it is Aunt May and how they portrayed Aunt May and the whole role that Aunt May played in this movie. Because here's the thing, guys. They're trying to sell us this Aunt May as she's been working at Feast and she's donating, or she's helping people out, which I get. I know from the games, from the comics, that that's what Aunt May does, right? But that has never really been said to us in the movies. In the first Spider-Man, in the second Spider-Man, they have never really dived deep into what Aunt May is as far as a character. Definitely not as much as the Tobey Maguire movies, that's for sure. And so when out of nowhere she is supposed to be the super holy character and is she literally convinces, and I actually kind of agree with Goblin that it's because of her that those decisions were made, and then and then they kill her off, and that whole thing, it didn't feel earned. Aunt May's death scene didn't feel earned. You know what felt earned is Aunt May's death scene in the Spider-Man game. That game, you go through a whole entire journey. You literally have to do, you literally see what Aunt May does. You see how much they love her. You see them throwing birthdays for her at Feast. You see her. you get to see how much Aunt May means to the community, to these people, to Peter, how much she's influenced him. We didn't get any of that in this movie. So if you're just a regular moviegoer who doesn't really, know, I just felt like that was such a miss. That was something that was so flagrant, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, but that's how I felt. That death didn't feel earned. I didn't feel emotion, and the fact that it kind of turned Peter a bit, I just felt like there was something missing there. Either we didn't get enough time with Aunt May in previous movies or even in this movie, and I kind of didn't like that she made him make that decision. It honestly felt kind of cheap. It felt kind of cheap that Aunt May is just like, wait, no, this man is lost. You can't. And Peter's like, but if we don't send him back, our universe is screwed. Literally, Doctor Strange just told me that. We're talking about Doctor Strange, right? It's not just some Joe Schmo who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. This is a guy who helped save the world and bring back half of the population. You kind of want to believe him. So you guys, I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I didn't like how they portrayed Doctor Strange, and I didn't like what they did with Aunt May and how she influenced Peter to that level. But I will say one thing that I really, really liked, which was one of my complaints from the previous movies, and why I said I still appreciate the Tobey Maguire movies more, is that by the end of this film, because of what happened and no one remembering now who Peter Parker is, he's finally on his own. He's finally making his own costume. He has his own apartment now. He's going to have to find his own job. Now we're getting to that Peter that we know that I love to see in Spider-Man, right? Now he's going to have to balance that Spider-Man being a hero and still dealing with an identity, still dealing with, getting a job, still dealing with trying to get the girl, right? What's going to happen with MJ? I don't know, but we're going to see. So I'm glad that they left it there. He's making his own suit now. He's not relying on Tony Stark. He's not relying on Stark technology. So I'm glad that that's where we're at, and I'm excited to see how it goes moving forward. Guys, don't get me wrong. I absolutely loved Spider-Man. Great movie. No Way Home was awesome. It is one of those movies where I will remember my experience going to see it, and definitely rewatchable, but those two things for me just kind of really bugged me, and I feel like people are just kind of claiming the movie to be the best thing since sliced bread. And I definitely don't think it's a perfect film. So I definitely wanted to at least mention those things. So yeah, and so with that, guys, that wraps up everything that Marvel gave to us in 2021. Like I said, we're talking about 9 total projects that came out from Marvel in 2021. So with that said, guys, let's do some rankings. All right, so let's give you my Marvel Disney Plus show rankings for 2021. So for this one, we got 5 shows. So let's start off with number 5, the one that came at the bottom. But guys, like I said, even though it's at the bottom, doesn't mean it was the worst thing I've ever seen. It just wasn't my favorite. It was my least favorite, actually. And that's Hawkeye. So yeah, so Hawkeye is my number 5, my least favorite Marvel show that came out. Like I said, loved Haley Steinfeld. Loved that Yelena was in there. But for me personally, this was probably the weakest show that they have given us. And, I hope that if they do give us a season 2, I doubt it. But if we see these characters later on, that they're able to give us a little more. So Hawkeye at number 5. Let's move on to number 4. So at number 4, I have What If. Now, this one is very tough, guys. This one almost came in at number 3 because of how much I really love those last 2 episodes. But at the end of the day, when I try to go back and watch it, when I think about the rewatchability about this show, I do think, do I want to rewatch those first 2 episodes? Like I said, those for me felt the weakest. So, or just the ones that I just, whatever. So because of that, it does come in at number 4. Still very surprised, guys. I cannot tell you how impressed I was with this show. The animation was phenomenal, and the storyline was just as good as well. So, What If coming in at number 4. Number 3. Now, for number 3, guys, like I said, I was kind of battling. It almost went down to number 4, but it did end up coming in at number 3, and that's The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a lot that I liked about it. Like I said, that character development, that character focus on both Falcon and Bucky was amazing. I can't praise Wyatt Russell enough for his portrayal as U.S. agent. I hated him so much, and that just means he did a great job. So, but just as equally, there were some very flagrant things, especially in the finale. I just hate how, like, at the end, after everything that's happened, they just kind of buddy up and team up with U.S. agent right at the end. And also, Power Broker would just lame storyline. So I don't like what they did with Agent 13 and that post-credit scene. Also, it was just like, leave Agent 13 the way she was, you know. She was a great character that way. Now I just don't believe her as being the power broker. All right, so now we're down to the top 2. What's it going to be, guys? I think you know. Number 2, guys, I have WandaVision. Once again, this was very, very close with number 1. But why did I put WandaVision at number 2? That finale. I really liked WandaVision. The idea, the concept of doing the different decades each episode, that alone might have put it at number 1 for me. But the show to me fell apart kind of in the finale. Aside from that great battle / discussion that Vision had with White Vision, that whole CGI battle, it just, you know, and just kind of how everything wrapped up, it was good but not great. Now it was disappointing, guys. I mean, we had such high expectations. Mephisto never showed up. That wasn't even Pietro from the X-Men universe. It was Ralph Boner. So, like, you know, it was a disappointment, and that's why it's number 2. Bottom line. At number 1, we have Loki. Guys, Loki was great. It's so much fun to watch. The whole variant thing, like the idea that there was a female Loki named Sylvie and he falls in love with her, awesome. You know, the fact that we get Owen Wilson and he plays the role that he did as Mobius, awesome. But for me, what puts this show at number 1, without the finales of WandaVision and Loki, if you take those out, I would put WandaVision at number 1 and Loki at 2. But because of the finale of Loki and getting He Who Remains as Jonathan Majors, who his variant is Kang the Conqueror, that finale and that conversation and that explanation, to me, sold me on everything. I mean, that was great. That was handled so well, so delicately, but with fun as well. And then the fact that he fights with Sylvie towards the end and what Sylvie does, I mean, the whole betrayal, I mean, it's not really, I guess it is a betrayal, but everything in that finale I thought was awesome. I thought it was well done. I liked how they did it. And because of that, Loki is my number 1. And I think it's well deserved because, you know, Tom Hiddleston has put in his time and he deserved his own series, and now he's going to get a season 2. So I'm very excited for that. There it is, guys. That is my rankings for the Marvel Disney Plus shows 1 through 5. I have Loki. I have WandaVision. Then I have The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, What If, and finally Hawkeye. What a great year of content. What a great year of shows. I'm so excited for what is to come for Disney and its shows. I'm excited for She-Hulk. I'm excited for Ms. Marvel. Moon Knight is coming out. That looks amazing. So can't wait to see what else that they do. So great year for Disney Plus shows for sure. Now it's time to go into my MCU film rankings for 2021. With this one, there are only 4 films that came out this year. Coming in at number 4, guys, I know it's going to be a bit of a surprise for everyone because to a lot of people, this was their favorite movie. But in 4th place for me is ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Guys, please don't take this as me thinking or saying that this movie sucks. It doesn't. It's a great film. It's a lot of fun. It's a great watch with friends. It's a great watch with family. Overall, it's a great film. But we're talking about MCU films here, and we're talking about me personally and my preferences. The fact that they have Trevor Slattery in this just really, really soured the film for me, and even trying to get over that, I felt like that third act, there were some things that just didn't add up for me. Overall, it's a great movie, but for me personally, the other 3 films for me, just I enjoyed a little bit more. So coming in at number 3, I have Black Widow. And I know a lot of people are like, really, you're going to have Black Widow over Shang-Chi? And I'm going to say, yes, I am, because there were a lot of things that I liked about this movie, and as I mentioned already, quite a few things that I didn't. But the things that I like really outweigh the things that I didn't. Florence Pugh as Yelena in this movie is a revelation. It is great casting. Maybe the best casting that Marvel has had in a while. So the fact that she's in this movie, the fact that we get to meet her in this movie, the fact that we get this whole family dynamic that just works great, awesome. The action was great. Now, obviously, yeah, Taskmaster was terrible. The way that they utilized Taskmaster, the character was not great. And the whole Red Room storyline and the villain, you know, you guys know my thoughts on that. I still think that this movie gave us a lot. The relationship of Yelena and Natasha, it was just super strong and very well done. So for me personally, Black Widow comes in at number 3. Now, top two, guys, once again, I think it's going to be a bit of a shocker for most people, but at number 2 this year, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I know many of you guys might say, what? Are you serious? For many of you guys, this might be your number 1 movie. And it came at number 2, not really because of the things that I didn't like about it, but more so what I did like about number 1. So, just to finish off with Spider-Man is great movie. Honestly, guys, in any other year, it probably would have been number 1. But because Eternals came out this year, I have to say that Eternals is my number 1 movie of the year. That movie, it just clicked with me. I loved every character. I loved the script. I loved the way it was shot. I loved what Chloe Zhao did with it. I loved the emotion. And so if it was any other year, I would probably say Spider-Man would be my number 1 film. But this is the year that Eternals came out. And let me just say that I watched Spider-Man No Way Home in theaters 4 times. So that's not to say that I didn't support the movie either, but I feel like Eternals really surpassed the comic book genre and wasn't just a comic book film, but it was just a really great, dramatic, like Oscar-y almost film for me. That's why I have Eternals ranked at number 1. So guys, let's go over my final rankings for 2021 again. At number 1, I have Eternals. At number 2, I have Spider-Man No Way Home. At number 3, I have Black Widow. And at number 4, I have ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, guys, I feel like some of those are some hot takes, and I know that, not everyone might agree, but that's the great thing about film. It's that it's subjective and everyone can have their own opinion. Guys, that is the Marvel 2021 wrap-up. What an incredible year, and I'm so excited to see what else Marvel has in store for us. With that said, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Hey, everyone, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for what's next to come on The Real Breakdown.